Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. I'm just going to give a brief overview of K-State's budget. They were in the back of our higher education budget, but before every university presents, I'm just going to read over their operating expenditures, category of expenditures, etc. So if you see on that first page, which is page 33, that starts with K-State University. The agency requests an operating budget of $601.3 million, including $138.1 million SGF for fiscal year 2025. This is an all funds increase of $6.3 million or 1.1%, including an SGF decrease of 1.8 or 1.6% above the FY 2024 estimate. And the governor concurs with the agency's request for fiscal year 2025. If you flip over to page 34 and 35, this is for the extension at K-State, known as K-State ESARP. 35 has that information. The agency requests an operating budget of $167.9 million, including $60.6 million SGF for fiscal year 2025. This is an all funds increase of $401,191 or 0.2%, including an SGF increase of $217,341 and 0.7% above the 2024 revised estimate. And the governor concurs with the agency's request for fiscal year 2025. And then that very last page on the back is for KSU VetMed. The agency requests an operating budget of $69 million, including $17.8 million SGF for fiscal year 2025. This is an all funds increase of $225,000 or 0.3%, including an SGF increase of $39,000. And the governor concurs with the agency's request. I did want to note in that commodity section, you can see that there's a negative $12 million. And so I did speak with the agency about that. And there was the vet hospital transition to from a corporation to wholly being owned by KSU. So there's just a revenue decrease. But if you wanted to speak to the agency further, they can tell you about that decrease in commodities. And so like I said before, I will do this for KU, Pitt State, and Emporia State. So with that, I will stand for any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brianna. Any questions for Brianna? Representative Fairchild.
When it comes to thank you, Mr. Chairman, when it comes to these university numbers and the total amount that they get, are we just looking at the amount of money that we directly give them, and does that not include the amount of money that the Board of Regents sends to them?
Right. So this is so outside of enhancements, this is just what the agency themselves have requested for the salaries, wages. This has nothing to do with necessarily what's in the Board of Regents. This is just for the agency as a whole.
So, Brianna, if you could clarify, when we talk about enhancements, are all of those enhancements going to be through KBOR?
Correct. So the KBOR is the pass through for that. So if K-State has an enhancement, that goes through the Board of Regents, and then it'll go back to K-State when it's time for the appropriation.
Okay. Would you be able to double check with Dylan, perhaps, if we could do it the other way to have the enhancements follow the university?
I can check with Dylan. Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious if that's a matter of formatting or if we're really locked into it all going through KBOR. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, thank you, Brianna, for the informative presentation. Next, I'd like to welcome to the podium President of Kansas State University, Richard Linton. Thank you.
Is this better? Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and rest of the committee members. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I don't know if it's possible to bring up my presentation. And I believe all of you should also have a handout as well. So we entitled this presentation, Kansas State University, the University for Kansans, just as a reminder or a reflection to us about the importance of a land-grant university. It's about research, teaching, and extension in every single community around the state. It's about what we can do to be able to help move Kansas forward, improve communities, create jobs, and help to create a stronger economy for the state. And I think one of the things I'm hoping that as we go through the presentation is that you realize the new K-State, especially in the last few years as we've gone through a new strategic planning effort, this is all about what we're trying to do to be able to help our state first and then make a national and a global presence as well. Next slide, please. So the past year and 3 months, we've been going through the process of creating a new strategic plan for Kansas State University, which will take us to 2030. And I just wanted to highlight some of the important factors that came out of our strategic planning effort. The first is we're focusing on what we call One K-State. And this is about bringing all of our units, all of our departments together, all of our physical campuses in Salina, Olathe, and Manhattan, bringing together the Alumni Association, athletics, the foundation, and all of our cooperative extension units and research farms around the state to move in a more productive way so that we're more impactful and we're also more efficient in the work in which we do. Some of the strategic imperatives that came out of our strategic plan, many of these should not surprise you. The first one and the most important challenge that land-grant universities are having in higher education is student enrollment. And certainly Kansas State University has had our challenges over the past decade relative to student enrollment. So we're focusing on student enrollment, recruitment efforts, retention efforts, and ensuring that students that come to Kansas State University have the best chances possible to graduate in a timely manner and then be successful. We're focusing on research and discovery, and I'll talk about some of the aspirations we have in moving forward. But when we think now about research and discovery, we're thinking, how can this help the state of Kansas, and how can we use this to be able to attract partners in industry into the state? Of course, more effective engagement around the state. I'll talk about that as well. Economic prosperity and operational excellence around the people that we employ, as well as the spaces that we have on campus and throughout the state. We also talked about what are those areas that we can bring the entire university together, all the different units, all the different departments throughout the entire state. And there were 4 what we call opportunity agendas. One is on community health and well-being, noting that when we talk to communities around the state, that rural health is an incredibly important issue in Kansas. Sustainability, global food security and biosecurity, where we've been a global leader for the past 20 years, and also enabling technologies. Next slide, please. One of the things that we've been working on relative to enrollment is lessening the student debt challenge and making going to college more affordable. And we've worked on in-state scholarships, out-of-state scholarships, and we've also worked, we should go to the slide before if we could. The slide afterwards. Well, one of the slides must have gotten deleted. So there it is, got it. The Land Grant Promise is a scholarship that's offered to those that are financially challenged, and you can see a $2.5 million investment being made to be able to help those that are more financially disadvantaged so that they have a tuition-free experience at Kansas State. Next slide, please. There's been a lot of activity that's been ongoing at Kansas State University in the last couple of years, and in just a minute, I'll show you our progress relative to student enrollment, but it's been around improving communications to parents, prospective students, guidance counselors, and teachers. It's been a huge effort to be able to help with the student debt and student affordability issue around in and out of state scholarships. And last year, as just to give you an example, we raised over $120 million for scholarships to be able to help our students. 81% of our students get some form of financial aid. Better technologies, ensuring that we're connecting better with high school students, 17 and 18-year-olds and their parents, and making sure that our form of communications are as impactful as they can be. We're also reaching out in this entire state, and you'll see in just a moment that a team and I have visited all 105 counties and communities. Part of that is to listen to our stakeholders and what they need, but also a part of it is to be able to talk about student recruitment efforts. And then I think lastly, creating a bigger and bolder vision for enhancing the student experience. Kansas State University is known as one of the best places in the country to be able to come to school. The Princeton Review quite often ranks us in the top 5 relative to student experience around things that are important, like student happiness, student welfare, and the experience that they have with mental health, health services, athletics, and the like. Next slide, please. So when we take a look at how we're moving forward with the strategic plan, one of our strategies is to be able to enhance research innovation, and our goal is to be to $300 million by the year 2030. Today, we sit just at around $200 million with a record-breaking year last year of $221 million awarded in competitive research dollars. To date, we're at about $145 million with 7 months into the year. Some of the examples of the projects, just to give you a perspective of things that are being funded that are important to the state of Kansas. You'll see an award to the College of Engineering for rural livelihoods and water-stressed central areas of the state. And also you'll see another example of veterinary medicine, $1 million award that was recently awarded for the creation of an African swine fever vaccine. One of the things that we're doing to be able to stimulate faster solutions to problems that we have in the state is to be able to build interdisciplinary teams. And we have a grants program that we've been doing on campus called the Game Changing Research Initiation Program, which is all about building robust teams that can go after the biggest issues and challenges for our state. Next slide, please. Just another example of something that I think is very relevant and important to the needs of Kansans. This is a faculty member in soil fertility and nutrient management, just received a $7.7 million award to be able to focus on how can we make our row crops more productive and a better management of water, better resource management and better water conservation, which is a challenge today, and it's going to be an ongoing challenge in the next 10 years. Next slide, please. You know, one of the things I learned as a dean of a college of agriculture is you need to build relationships and you need to understand what's important to the people of the state. And so we spent the last couple of years focusing on visiting every single one of our 105 communities in the state, engaging, listening to what's important to them, and trying to identify how do we best move forward when it comes to applied research solutions, as well as effective cooperative extension programs. As an example, the last 160 years, we've been focusing on agriculture and food systems and nutrition and 4-H and youth development. These are all very important programs at the extension level. But when you look at what's important to communities of today, it's things like rural health care, it's housing, it's child care, and it's elderly care. And I think we need to be a next generation land-grant university and start thinking about what has been important for a long time, but more importantly, what's important for communities and moving forward. Next slide, please. So 2 programs I wanted to just first thank you for your support, and secondly, talk a little bit about the progress that we're having. The first one is K-State 105. This was a program that was supported last year in the legislative budget, and this is all about how do we do a better job of creating jobs, building the economy, and attracting industry to want to come to the state of Kansas to work, but also a way that we can retain our graduates to be able to make sure that we're trying to keep more graduates in the state of Kansas. And we're going to give a very full update on K-State 105 and the progress later in February. I'll give you details about when we'll be back to the State House to be able to do that. Next slide, please. Another program that was supported last year impacts our #1 need from a job perspective and moving forward. We know that advanced manufacturing and food manufacturing and biomanufacturing represents about 60% of all new jobs that we're going to have in Kansas. So we had proposed putting together our sweet spot where Kansas State University is strong, which is on the biomanufacturing component of advanced manufacturing. And there was last session a $5 million recurring support to support biomanufacturing. You'll see with this slide, we're enhancing our space. We're also creating better instrumentation and better equipment and starting to work on workforce development and talent acquisition. Just this year alone, we'll hire 12 new faculty members in 4 interdisciplinary critical core areas that supports biomanufacturing. This effort is not only happening on the Manhattan campus, but a similar effort is happening on the Olathe campus as well, where there's a tremendous opportunity to partner with the Kansas City region. Next slide, please. I also wanted to just briefly mention and also thank you for your support in facilities and taking down facilities that can no longer be modernized, as well as facilities that can be modernized through repair and renovation. If you recall, there was funding that supported both efforts, and Kansas State University in fiscal 24 received a little over $4.5 million for demolition funding and an additional $6 million for capital renewal that was used for repair and renovation with a 1-to-1 match. So in total, there's $16.6 million with our matching funding. And with these dollars alone, we've already seen a $27.5 million total savings. So I think this is a really good thing for the university, but it's also a very smart thing to do fiscally for the state. Just an example of a couple of projects that were funded by this partnership: the College of Veterinary Medicine's new animal surgery suite and the College of Engineering's renovation of West Seton Hall, which will also help with their advanced manufacturing effort. Next slide, please. I wanted to now talk about some of the legislative requests that Kansas State University has for this fiscal cycle. As I go through these, the first three are those that are in the governor's budget, and then the remainder are not in the governor's budget, but they are supported by the Kansas Board of Regents. Next slide, please. The first is a payoff for the biosecurity biosecurity level 3 building on the Kansas State University's campus. This is Pat Roberts Hall. And so I think all of you know that after 18 years, we finally opened up the NBAF facility, the USDA NBAF facility this year, which is a BSL level 4 facility. It's the highest level facility possible. We are the only place in the nation or the world that has BSL level 1, 2, 3, and 4 for all species on the same campus. So this building is about 10 years old, of a 20-year payoff, and it's my understanding 11 or 12 years ago, this was not to be paid by the university. It was to be done legislatively, and while I wasn't here, I recognize and understand that Kansas State has been paying this building off the last 10 years. Some legislators have recognized that, and so we have proposed that the remainder of the next 10 years would be paid off using this support. This will enable us to be able to do the things that we need to do with the $2.2 million relative to talent acquisition, hiring faculty, hiring leadership, repair and renovation of the building, and instrumentation. Right now, we can't be the partner that we need to be with NBAF. With this additional funding, we feel like we can be the partner that USDA ARS expects with connecting our BSL 3 facility with the work that they do in their BSL 4 facility. Next slide, please. The second one is, I'm often asked, what's the most significant and most proudest thing that has happened over the last couple of years at K-State? And for me, certainly one of those is the Ag Innovation Project. So this is between a $210 and a $220 million aspiration around repair and renovation and new capital construction of agriculture facilities. The average age of our agriculture facilities is over 60 years old, and we're struggling to be able to attract and retain faculty, and also to attract students, and also to be able to do game-changing research that's important for our number one economic engine in the state, which is agriculture and food systems. So if you recall, a couple of years ago, there was a 3-to-1 match challenge with ARPA dollars, where the state would provide 1x if the university could provide 3x. We actually raised $82 million in a 4-month period to be able to receive $25 million from the state with that 3+ to 1 match. That shows you the importance and the passion and the need for new facilities that support agriculture. We're a little over $65 million to being completed with this project. And so the proposal here is that we'd have a 1-to-1 match to challenge and leverage the finishing of this funding philanthropy with a 1-to-1 match from the state of Kansas. Next slide, please. The Kansas Water Initiative is perhaps the most important and impactful project that we have submitted this year. This is about dealing with one of our most important issues and challenges relative to agriculture productivity. The state of Kansas has significant challenges already relative to the water supply that's used for agriculture production. And we have an aquifer that's got about another 8 or 10 years of being productive. So we need to find a way to be able to work together in a statewide effort to be able to find solutions, whether they're agriculture production solutions, genetic solutions, or water conservation solutions, to be able to ensure that our agricultural economy is as strong as it can possibly be. And so this is done initially in partnership with the University of Kansas and Fort Hays State University, but we're also hoping to bring our other sister universities on board to help with this effort. Everybody's got to be involved in helping to provide solutions relative to water. Next slide, please. This last one, which is actually a KBOR submission around rural education. This is a $5 million recurring ask that's being done across all the institutions. This is about doing a better job of providing education to rural communities to ensure that those that are rural communities are getting the education that they need, but also that they're staying in rural communities. I think we have a huge teacher shortage as an example. And one of the solutions with rural education in this way is that we can help solve some of the challenges that we have in rural and distressed communities. I won't go to the extent on this, but this would provide support and help to two colleges, the College of Education and the College of Arts and Sciences, to be able to help partner with community colleges, partner with high schools to be able to deliver more effective and efficient educations to those in rural communities. Next slide, please. These last three programs are not in the governor's budget, but they are supported by KBOR. I'll just briefly mention them. The first is the Kansas State Veterinary Diagnostic Lab. We have a state diagnostic lab, which is located in Manhattan, Kansas, with a cooperative agreement with the state to be able to provide diagnostic services. This building and facility is over 50 years old. It's in terrible need of being renovated. And the challenge is we're going to be the only university in the world that is BSL level 1, 2, 3, 4 for all species, and a state-of-the-art facility with the USDA level 4 NBAF facility and our level 3 BSL facility. We need at some point in time a diagnostic veterinary lab that can support the needs of these other facilities on our campus. And so this would be a one-time ask to be able to do a study to be able to understand what kind of a facility would be needed for this state facility. The other is an Institute for Digital Agriculture and Advanced Analytics. We recognize that as we move the agriculture economy forward as a land-grant university, a big piece of it's going to be data, digital agriculture and decision-making, utilizing these tools and information relative to sensor technologies and information that can help farmers make better decisions. And the last request is on our Salina campus, which is a $2 million one-time request, which would be involved in virtual training that would initially be used for law enforcement and security, and then would ultimately be used for unmanned and for manned aircraft. Next slide, please. I wanted to also just mention, I had mentioned earlier the great success that we're having with K-State 105 that's being done to be able to try to help create jobs and build the economy around the state by forging partnerships with many different kinds of organizations and agencies around the state. We've got K-State's Impact Day, where we will focus on Kansas State University's impact to the economy. We've got an economic feasibility, which will show our overall impact just to the state of Kansas and outside of the state of Kansas, as well as some of the work and highlights of our success already just 7 months out relative to K-State 105. That program will be on February the 21st. From 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock. From 10 o'clock, we're going to have a short program. But of course, there's going to be educational information that'll be there for the entire day. And most important for you is when the ice cream is served. The ice cream will be served from 12 to 1. It's Kalhar ice cream, which is made on campus at Kansas State. And we're celebrating Kansas State's commitment to Kansas as a land-grant university, as the first land-grant university for the past over 160 years. Next slide, please. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for questions. And again, thank you for the invitation to be here today.
Thank you, President Linton. And I do appreciate you taking the time this past summer to visit with me when you were in Salina. I do appreciate those opportunities to visit. If anybody has any questions, please let the vice chair know. He'll keep a list, but I'll start off with some questions. President Linton, and I'm going to be asking all the universities the same question, but are you faced with a deficit in terms of, there's declining enrollments from our peak enrollment period? I think K-State was peak enrollment 2014. Is that correct?
24. So it would have been, just 10 years ago. That's correct.
Okay. And so nationally speaking, we see these trends, and no one's really immune to kind of what's going on, declining birth rates and this enrollment cliff that is facing every institution. So the pie is getting a little smaller in terms of the population that we can recruit from, but those have real world implications for an institution. So does K-State University have a deficit in terms of because of the declining enrollment?
So I think declining enrollment, as you had suggested, is a very important issue around the country. As we thought about developing the next generation land grant, we started thinking differently about what the purpose of a land grant is. And the purpose of a land grant is not just to provide education to degree-seeking students. It's to provide education to all of the citizens of the state. So our answer to addressing the student enrollment challenges is, first of all, let's do some of the things that we were talking about: better technology, getting scholarships, better communication around the state, looking at both in-state and out-of-state opportunities. And we're seeing a rise there. In our strategic plan, our goal is to go from 19.5 to 23.5 to 25,000 students. And so we're projecting out a growth over the next several years, even with all of these challenges, because of the new methods that we're using. But in addition to just thinking about degree-seeking students, we're also thinking about certificate programs and credentials. And we think as a next generation land-grant university, we should be thinking wider relative to students. In fact, in our strategic plan, we call them learners, which would include degree-seeking and non-degree-seeking students. And we have an aspiration of having between 5,000 and 7,000 more learners that are within that category. So I think from our perspective, we're less worried about having to deal with a challenge of less students. We're focused on what can that student of tomorrow look like and how can we be impactful to the state.
Thank you, President Linton. But in terms of a deficit, in terms of budgetary, is there a budget deficit?
So if you look at 2014 to today, we're roughly 22 to 23% less students on the undergraduate side, and that would result in about a $65 to $7 million recurring deficit that we don't have because of the tuition loss. Our goal is to be able to regain much of that back as we go from 19.5 to 23.5 to 25,000 students. And I think the good thing is we have control over getting that back if we make smart strategies about regaining that student number at Kansas State.
And how much was that deficit again?
65 to 70 million in recurring funding associated with tuition loss.
That would be the total amount over the 10 years?
That would be per year.
Per year.
Yes. So you're looking at a difference from about almost 25,000 students in 2014 to 19,500 today. So that's the challenge that I think our institution has had. And so we have tried to work within our means to be able to do what we can. But we realize that we should focus on resources that we feel like we can have control over. And this is one that I think if we have smart practices, we can have better control and help ourselves financially.
Yes. In terms of trying to increase that enrollment, and very ambitious nonetheless, what do you think is going to make the difference in helping you reach that goal? Because it seems like more universities in state are going out of state to try to get those people. So where do you identify some of those potential areas of growth?
So potential areas of growth, we're right now 80-20, 80 in state, 20 out of state, probably shifting from 80-20 to 70-30 financially makes sense over time. And if you look at states that we have developed good relationships with and spent a lot of our recruiting time on, it would be Illinois, Missouri, Nebraska, Colorado, Texas is a big state, Oklahoma. California is actually a very big state as well. So as we think about recruitment efforts, we think, what can we do to be able to compete as well as we can in the state? What can we do to articulate the value of higher education, not just for Kansas State University, but for all of the educational institutions around the state, both 2 years and 4 years and otherwise? I think we've got an opportunity to be able to express the importance of higher education, and work both on the in-state and the out-of-state side. I don't believe that if we just stayed with the in-state figures we had today, that we could be successful. So out-of-state's got to be a part of our strategies. And I think when you look at trying to be able to retain more talent in the state, that's a real benefit. If we can draw more out-of-state students into the state and keep them long-term, I think that helps the economy.
Thank you, President Linton. One of the slides was mentioned about the deferred maintenance and some of the investments that the state has made to help the university kind of address that issue. But also on one of the slides, it talks about the Ag Innovation Institute, and part of that project would be 10 buildings. And so how is that being balanced moving forward? And do you feel that KBOR's model that they have everybody under to utilize the size and scope of their infrastructure? Do you think that will be able to help you sustain moving forward?
I will tell you that it's helped tremendously in order for us to be successful. If you look at the 10 buildings, let me describe it a little bit more in detail. 3 of those buildings will be taken down, utilizing help and funds from the state to be able to do that. 2 of the buildings will be renovated, Call Hall and Weber Hall, which are currently on campus, mainly to be able to support animal and food science. And then there'll be 5 new structures. There'll be a new structure that'll be in between Call Hall and Weber Hall to stimulate interdisciplinary research across all these buildings. There'll be a new livestock arena. The older livestock arena is being taken down. And then there'll be 2 agronomy research farm research laboratory buildings that'll be associated with the agriculture research farm right across the street from Bill Snyder Stadium. So from our perspective, we're trying to leverage everything we can. We're trying to leverage support that comes from the state. So for the Ag Innovation Project, the $25 million one-to-one match would be critically important in that effort. We're looking at help and support federally, and we're also looking at help and support from a philanthropic standpoint. We will raise for that project alone over $150 million in a 3 to 4 year period. Now, let me give you a perspective. I had mentioned in that 3-to-1 match where we had to raise 3 times as much for a 1x match from the state. We raised $82 million in 4 months. That represented 14 years of fundraising previous to this project. That should show you how important and how passionate our stakeholders are to be able to make this project be successful. But it's incredibly important and incredibly helpful with the partnership that we have with the state relative to demolition and capital renewal.
Thank you, President Linton. My last question, before going on to some of the other members of the committee, it was mentioned about this agreement with the BRI Institute or Pat Roberts Hall that some years ago there was some sort of an agreement made that the state would step in to take care of the debt. But is there anything in writing, or is this more of a gentleman's agreement?
I've not been able to find anything in writing. This was a number of conversations that have been had with legislators, both that had been here and those that are here now. And I'm not sure I wasn't here 10 years ago, but Kansas State University was not expecting to have to pay this $44 million for the building. And I think we've struggled. It's strapped our abilities to be able to do what we need to be able to do to be a good partner with NBAF. And I think one of the challenges there is that the BRI facility was used as leverage to ensure that we were successful at getting the $1.3 billion for NBAF. And so this has been proposed as a way for us to be able to rebuild our capacity. There's repair and renovation that's needed in that building. There's better modernized equipment and instrumentation. And frankly, we don't have some of the faculty that we need and some of the leadership that we need to build those bridges and partnerships. And it's important to do that because when we do that effectively, that's when industry comes to Manhattan, Kansas, and that's when jobs are created. So it's kind of a domino effect of the importance of that support. Without that support, we will continue to struggle until we pay off the building.
Thank you, President Linton. Go to my Vice Chair, Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, President. Last week, we had a presentation from the Dairy Association. And of course, the reason they were here was to support a request that's actually not in the budget, as you're aware, to build a new dairy farm. And it's a pretty significant ask of $40 million. Just how bad off is the current dairy farm? And even though it's not on your list of priorities for this year, where would you rank that as something that needs to be addressed?
Yeah, I had mentioned earlier that the average age of a facility for agriculture is over 60 years. There are so many of our facilities that are in incredible need relative to repair and renovation or just new capital construction. Many years ago, this was built out into 3 different phases. The first phase is what you're seeing with the Ag Innovation Project. And that's what our number 1 priority is to be able to get through that first phase. But there's actually long-term, there's 2 other phases. The dairy facilities are in that second phase of priority. But I will tell you too, that those facilities are incredibly important, especially with one of the few industries that's dramatically growing. I think many of you know that the dairy industry will double in size over the next several years to be able to support a dairy and cheese manufacturing facility in the western part of the state and the 10 to 12 dairies that are going to be able to support it. If you were to go to our dairy today, we don't have the modernized facilities. We don't have the modernized milking parlors that we need to support the research needs of the state and also in order to be able to support workforce training of our students so that they're equipped and ready to be able to go into the industry. It is not a university priority at this time. It is not a KBOR priority at this time, but it is incredibly important for our industry. And it's right around the corner relative to where we will focus our energy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to say congratulations for being cancer-free. That is amazing.
Thank you.
And it's very good news. So I know how good that is. But I also, on the same par with what the vice chair said, you're putting money into animal science and the livestock arena. And it seems like we've got a lot of things that need to kind of fit into that slot as well. So is there a way to spread it out a little bit more and help everyone so they can raise money for other things as well?
It's a great question. We need to move in that direction, but we're trying to take this in doable chunks. And someone would say a $220 million chunk is not a doable chunk, but we're going after it and trying to be successful. I was not here 10 years ago. It was a different dean that was there that established these are the priorities. At the time, the dairy industry was not doubling in size, so that was not taken into consideration. I think the big issue and challenge that we have here is we have $150 million that's coming in from philanthropic support, many of which is coming from those industries for those specific projects. And I think that's one of the challenges that the dean of the College of Agriculture is trying to deal with. Let's try to get this project done first and then work on the second phase.
Okay. All that not necessarily about that project, but because you have so much that can be hacked and taken and lots of personal information as well as lots of sensitive research, what kind of security measures has K-State made since they had a little bit of an issue a little bit
Yeah, so as we know that there has been I'll call it an IT interruption over the last couple of weeks. And one of the things I will tell you, I have not had a more prouder moment since I've been at K-State relative to our team's response on a very difficult issue and a very difficult challenge. And they probably work 20 hours a day, this team has, in order to be able to remove the source of entry, to be able to contain it, and to be able to rebuild the system. We have been concerned ever since I've been here relative to cybersecurity, and I know my colleagues across the other institutions are very concerned as well. I believe that there needs to be a major investment in moving forward to be able to protect all of our institutions from the kind of attack that we had at Kansas State University. We're certainly working to be able to do things more effectively and more efficiently. I think this has enabled us through our strategic plan to be able to take process efficiency things that were going to take this long, and they're now going to take this long because we recognize where we need to be in moving forward. But I think it's really something that we all should take under consideration. This is not only going to be important for areas of public education, but it's going to be important for businesses and for state-run organizations as well. It's a major challenge. But my proudest moment has been the response and the hard working of that team.
Well, I'll tell you that we're working very hard on figuring out how to take care of cybersecurity for not only for the legislature, but the judicial branch as well as the executive branch, and then everyone, you're kind of all part of it, part and parcel. So we're working on that now. So hopefully we can get something done this year, and we'll see a change to get things started. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Go to my ranking member, Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, President Lenton, for being here.
Yep.
I was thinking back to, I guess, 2 years ago, but 3 sessions ago when we had the discussion about your plans. I think it was your second day on the job.
It was my second day. I hope things are better now.
I almost wore the Wildcat lapel pin, but then forgot we have a basketball game tonight. So I just wanted to, one, commend as a recovering higher ed fundraiser, commending the fact that you were able to secure over $80 million in funding in 4 years is unheard of. Being able to start those multi-million-dollar conversations often take years, if not decades. So commend you all on that work and being proactive. Circling back to enrollment, I know we talked about the plans that the university had to stop really the bleeding, and I feel like that has been accomplished. And so I know you've mentioned it and covered a little bit of this in your presentation, but wanted to provide an opportunity if you wanted to expand on what has worked with recruitment, but also retention of your students as well.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the word recruitment and retention, because so many times we only talk about recruitment, but I think a more important part of the equation is retention. Relative to recruitment, those things that I had mentioned relative to better communications, better technologies, fundraising, $120 million to be able to support in-state and out-of-state scholarships, building a better relationship in the state. I think all of those things are critically important. In addition to that, it's also having boots on the ground with recruiters. We have many more recruiters, both in-state and out-of-state. A recruiter can cover their salary if they can raise 7 or 8 students. And so let's get recruiters that can bring in 20, 30, 40 students. And I think that personal attention is becoming very, very important. Relative to retention, it's about our student experience. And I had mentioned how well thought of Kansas State University is relative to their student experience and how great of a place it is to be a student and how well we take care of parents' kids as a student at Kansas State University. But we're not stopping at where we are today. In fact, one of the things that we're talking about now is creating an applied experience for all of our students, where students will need to have a real life experience. It might be an internship, it might be an international experience, it might be undergraduate research, but we're wanting every single student that graduates at Kansas State University to be able to have that intangible experience that they can talk about in an interview. The other skill sets that we're trying to provide for our students are those skill sets that they don't normally learn or master as they're getting their degree. And it might be fiscal management. It might be management skills. It might be communication skills. These things that industry is saying we wish that students had better adaptability in these kinds of skill sets. And so we're working on developing ways and modules in which they can learn those skill sets for the real world. And so with a combination of the experiences and a better skill set coming in, we hope that that's attractive for parents. We hope that that's attractive for students. And we hope that that meets the needs of industry. One of the things we're really proud to be able to say is 97% of our, 96 to 97% of our students have a job upon graduation. That number is 20 points higher than any other place that I've worked. And I've worked at some really good land-grant universities. We do a really good job with that student experience and making sure that our students are prepared.
Thank you for expanding on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Linton, great to see you again. Glad
Good to see you.
Going well. One of the things that I want you to know, I'm very proud to be here today on this committee, because something that you said a minute ago and talking about as you go out and trying to increase enrollment is to make sure that we talk about higher education in Kansas and selling it as, you know, a Kansas experience and somebody who lives kind of up the road from you. It's something that's really important to me and I know all members of this committee. When you are out recruiting, you know, you got the kid who just getting out of high school or getting ready to make the decision about that next step in life, and all of a sudden he or she is being recruited by a little bit of everybody. And I mean, you talk about everything from university life to probably military and you name it. As somebody who went through that several years ago with my son, I know it was a real experience just to go through that part. You have all the tools you need, or what is some of the tools that are really missing? Go out and to be able to recruit that young person, be able to recruit his family or her family, you know, whoever it may be, to make that decision to come to a Kansas university.
I think we have the tools we need, but I think we need to be smarter about how we use the tools. And we need to be more effective about how we utilize communications, about how we better utilize recruiters. You know, we're finding at Kansas State University, if you can get them to Kansas State, there's between an 85 and 90% chance they're going to come because they feel it. And so how can you entice them to be able to come to campus for that visit? Or how can you otherwise give them that feeling about what it's like to be a Kansas State student without them visiting campus? And I think that's the trick that we're trying to work around. How do you do that? Do you have recruiters that are former students that be able to go back and connect with them in the high schools? That might be a way to do it. Is there a way that we can break kids on campus in the summertime so that they can see the campus? That's our biggest challenge. I think our challenge is less about do we have the tools versus how do we use those tools better to be more effective. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I'll go back to asking some additional questions I have.
So
President Linton.
I had a meeting with the speaker. I'm just asking him if he'll go.
Okay.
Step in.
Well, we don't want to keep you from a meeting with the speaker. I know he probably wants to meet with you. Just curious, in your admissions department, how many of those admission reps are Spanish speaking in terms of, because that's our largest growing demographic in many of our communities?
The answer is not enough. And relative to recruiters, the answer is not enough. We realize that the most opportunistic demographic in the state for a land-grant institution is likely Hispanic first-gen students. And we've got to do a much better job of trying to meet the needs of the state. And right now, that's what a land grant does. It meets the needs of the state at the time. And the needs of the state at this time is being able to fulfill more job opportunities in Western Kansas and finding a way to be able to get those students educated. So the answer is we don't have enough.
Very good. President Linton, I don't want to keep you from the speakers. your meeting with the speaker. I was late because I was in a meeting with the governor. So, but I wasn't trying to one up President Linton. But on behalf of the Higher Education Budget Committee, we do appreciate you and all the faculty and staff at Kansas State University, and wish you well tonight. I do think we have one last question.
Don't ask me who's going to win the game.
You guys, Representative Fairchild. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The research shows that K-State currently has $945 million in endowment funds. And so my question is, how much of that money do you spend each year, and what is it normally spent on?
So about 97 to 98% of funding in the endowment is very specific for a specific purpose. It might be used to be able to support student scholarships. It might be used for faculty programs. It could be used for buildings. Every specific pledge that's made for funding is very, very specific towards a specific need, and it's broad-based and it's across the board. But 97% of that is done based on the wishes of the donor.
Thank you, President Linton. We appreciate your time, and
Welcome.
Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Go Cats.
Okay, committee. I apologize for being late today. There was a few things I wanted to do at the beginning of the meeting. And, well, there's two things specifically. When we did the State Historical Society budget recommendations in the state library, there's a few things I got wrong, and I would like to hopefully clean those up. And so I would like to, I guess as chair, make a motion to reconsider the State Historical Society budget as well as the state library budget.
So moved. On the motion.
A motion to reconsider has been moved and seconded to bring back the Historical Society and State Library budget recommendations back to the committee. Is there any discussion or any questions? If not, we'll proceed to vote. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What exactly is the purpose of this, and what are we voting on?
A motion to reconsider is basically to, and I checked with KLRD staff, to bring back these budgets. I found some things I didn't get right when we did the budget recommendations. The schedule has changed around such that I have to report out these budgets to the House Appropriations Committee on Wednesday. I was originally supposed to do it, I think, the 19th. So it got moved up, and I didn't realize that until late last week. So I didn't have as much time to sort through some of these things. So.
Barb, did you have a question?
Representative Wasker.
Perhaps you could tell us what you got wrong so we knew whether we should.
Okay. Yeah. So in the State Historical Society budget for fiscal year 24, our budget committee concurred with the governor's recommendation. But then for fiscal year 25, that's the issue in which we dealt with their air handling units. They didn't initially include the chiller in part of that estimate or projected expense. And so when we looked at it, we pared down their request to $2.5 million. And so that deleted $260,000 from their request. I didn't realize it, but the governor removed the agency's 10% contingency, which is if it were to go over 10%, there would be a little wiggle room on things. So, so I think it's best that we would move to restore it to the governor's budget recommendation, especially in light that they want to open by Kansas Day of 2025. So that was State Historical Society. Then the State Library, there was the Tumble Book Library subscription. In our recommendation, I had suggested that we delete that. In the budget analysis, it said special revenue funds. And so I thought that was meaning state dollars, but it's actual federal dollars. It's part of their a federal fund that they can use that for the subscription. So there's really no point in us deleting it because they're going to have to figure out some other way to use that. So the agency recommends that that would be best used with continuing that subscription. So I misunderstood and thought it was continuation with some state dollars. Yeah, Representative Rogers.
Thank you. Okay. Can we, I guess this is a two-part question. May we do these separately? And Brianna or somebody could explain exactly what the motion is, because we've already approved something. And so do we go back and, because we're not necessarily doing all the governor's recommendations, we are on that one part. So could it be explained exactly basically what we're going to be reporting out? And could we do those as separate motions, please, since they're two different agencies?
Right, Representative. So right now what I've have made a motion is to motion to reconsider those budgets. So if that is approved, then we can begin discussing making those modifications, and we can do those separately.
Okay, yeah,
Those are separate budget recommend. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion, questions? If not, we'll proceed to. Yeah, there's no further discussion. We'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Motion to reconsider has been adopted. Let's start with the state library. Since the state librarian is here, I don't want to take too much more of his time. So in the state libraries, state library, in our budget recommendation for fiscal year 24, we had that we concurred with the governor's budget recommendation in fiscal year 2024 with the following adjustment, and that was to delete the $100,969, all from federal funds, to discontinue a subscription to the Tumble Book Library collection in fiscal year 2024. My general thought is that we remove that deletion. Representative Rajas.
Moved.
It's been moved and seconded to remove the deletion from our original budget recommendation to in turn restore that money to the state library for the Tumble Book Library subscription. Now we can have discussion. Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder if you could tell me if their budget included adding another full-time employee. I can't find my paperwork when I was looking.
I'll defer to Jennifer Light with KLRD to see if she can easily answer that question.
Jennifer Light, KLRD. No, ma'am. No, Mr. Chair. This is the just in fiscal year 24 and in fiscal year 25, it is 29.5 FTEs. There is not an increase in FTEs in fiscal year 24.
Thank you. And then one thing I think we all need to keep in mind is we can't keep increasing the budget with 1%, 2%, 3%, adding to everyone's budget every year because we're deficit spending. So I just would like the committee to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Representative Wassinger, so even though it's federal funds, you're suggesting that maybe I'm not specifically, could you get some more
I'm not
information?
specifically talking about Tumblr.
Okay.
Just
Right.
talking generally for all of the agencies.
Right. And that was part of my misunderstanding. I thought it was state dollars they were looking to use. Other questions? Discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote on the motion. And the motion has been moved and seconded to remove the deletion from fiscal year 24 in our budget recommendation. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. The deletion has been removed. Jennifer, do you need any clarification from us on that?
No, Mr. Chair, we're good there. I do want to say that there will be new subcommittee reports sent out today for you. Since the report out is Wednesday, it will be that I need to have, if somebody objects, it will be by tomorrow at 5 p.m. that those would need to be registered as a minority report.
Thank you, Jennifer. So now on the State Historical Society budget. So we've brought that back for reconsideration. Our fiscal year 24 budget recommendation, we concurred with the governor's request on that. And then for fiscal year 25, we had put in something about deleting the $260,000 SGF for the air handling unit and the chiller. Or that was, the adjustment left a total of 2.5 million. And I think the initial request is 2.7, between 2.7 and 2.8. I think it was closer to 2.8. Jennifer, could you give us a specific number of what that was? Then there was also item 2 on our recommendation that would have added language requiring them to issue a new request for proposal. So that I would recommend that be removed because ultimately an agency, they have to go through a request for proposal. That's part of the state process anyways. Jennifer?
Mr. Chair, the amount that was originally there was 2.76 million to cover the AHUs and the chiller.
That's 2,760,000 even?
No, I'll get you the exact amount here.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I stand corrected. It is 2.76 exactly. So 2,760,000 exactly.
Okay. So that would be based off of the Historical Society's estimate for both the air handling unit and the chiller. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And so if we just went ahead and say we removed those items 1 and 2 in our budget recommendation, then it would basically just stand as we're concurring with the governor's recommendation for 25.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we remove the deletion and concur with the governor's budget.
It's been moved and seconded to delete our modification to the governor's budget recommendation for fiscal year 25. Is there any discussion? Representative Fairchild.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel like they should be able to raise some amount of private money to pay for some of this stuff. I don't think it would be impossible for them to do that. And I mean, we already put a lot of state money into these agencies, and it would already be a spending increase over last year with the proposal that we originally had. So I would prefer to just stick with the original spending proposal.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, if not, we'll proceed to vote on the motion to amend the fiscal year 25 budget recommendation. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. Appears the ayes have it. Motion carries. Jennifer, do you need anything else from us?
No, Mr. Chair, I do not.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer, for being here. Committee, I do appreciate you revisiting that, and I apologize for causing a little bit of extra work on the back end, but I did want to make sure I hopefully got it a little bit cleaned up before I go to appropriations on Wednesday. That being said, we do have a meeting tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday. Tomorrow we have, who do we have tomorrow, Brianna? Community colleges and technical colleges. Wednesday we have, is it Washburn and the private institutions. And then Thursday is Pittsburgh State and Wichita State. So try to bring your questions, and I appreciate everybody's effort. So